Okay, the Democrats have a real mess on their hands. If you're having a bad day, remind yourself you could be one of the Democrat overlords that has to try to navigate the next 3 months. How are you going to deal with this problem of Tim Walz's stolen valor? And I am absolutely transfixed. I'm obsessed. I'm riveted by people who do this. I have a theory, and I want to test the theory out on you, because we know that in Connecticut, Richard Blumenthal famously got caught for lying about serving in the military in Vietnam. The New York Times called him out, of all places. Now, Connecticut voters keep electing this fraud. And I am convinced that lying about your college education, your work history, or certainly serving in the military is a symptom of mental illness. And I'll tell you why I feel that way in just a moment. But I want to kind of open up the phone lines. I want to dive into all of this. It's a big, big headache. Of course, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz still are avoiding the media like the plague. Yesterday, they were actually shouting at Governor Walz, what about stolen valor? And he wouldn't answer. He doesn't talk to them. Kamala isn't talking to them. She's not giving any on-the-record interviews. They're going to try to run out the clock. And the problem that they're going to face, look, this is open shut. The guy's a total fraud. The guy's a liar. The guy's a bad, bad dude. And they got a bad, bad headache on their hands. But here's the problem. They've got exuberant, big crowds. There is this aura of excitement over the Kamala Harris-Tim Walz ticket, which you and I know to be absolutely preposterous. You couldn't be excited about this ticket if somebody held a gun to your head. Nobody's excited about them, but they know at least it's not Joe Biden. She's younger. She's sassy. She sassed some heckler yesterday, and they loved it. She did that miserable I'm speaking routine, which really is endearing to a lot of men, right? Because that's what you want to hear is a woman snapping, I'm speaking. She's done that before. Remember when she did that with Mike Pence? I mean, this is not a likable lady. There's a reason she got 3% of the Democrat primary votes when she wanted to run for president. Nobody likes the woman. How can you? But as long as the crowds are showing up, this could cause a real headache because they're going to be like, well, we got crowds. We got people showing up in Philly and in Atlanta. They're cheering, and he's funny. He's making dirty jokes about J.D. Vance. Maybe we're onto something here. And normal Americans are saying, I wouldn't vote for this pair for co-dog catchers. So we're going to see how this all plays out. I want to open it up to you, 800-655-MIKE, 10 past the hour. It's Thursday, August the 8th. We're less than 90 days away from the election. And wild things are happening. Voters are rejecting progressivism. Just ask that screeching, raging lunatic Cori Bush with her violent rhetoric during her concession speech. Jamal Bowman is out. I think Ilhan Omar might be out. Minnesota voters, let me know. Are you a Republican? Are you going to cross over in the open primary next week and vote for her opponent to send her packing too? Can we dream that 3 of the members of the lunatic squad are going to be fired within the span of a few short months? So what do you make of all of it? Let's dive in. 800-655-MIKE. I also want to expand upon my theory that people who lie about their military service, their job, their education, they are mentally ill. I got a little personal experience with this, and I'll share it with you coming up. 800-655-MIKE. I hope you join us.
Mike Gallagher.
That's way far darker than a lot of people think. I mean, it is stolen valor. He's used the rank that he never achieved in order to advance his political career. He's done it for decades now, basically. I mean, maybe not decades, but damn close to it. I mean, he still says he's a retired command sergeant major to this day, and and he's not. He uses his rank of others to make it look like he's a better person than he is.
That's retired Command Sergeant Major Thomas Behrens talking to Laura Ingraham last night on Fox News. It was a fascinating conversation. And it gives you a look into this dark world of people who lie about their military service. And I have to admit, I've seen people embellish. I'm melodramatic. I exaggerate. I admit it. I've exaggerated. I mean, I can't think of anything factually that I've ever just flat out fabricated. I got a degree from Yale. Oh, I went to Harvard. I mean, can you imagine me getting on the air and saying something about my education or my career? I worked. I was a guest host on the Tonight Show. I mean, I can't imagine how anything that's easily fact-checked would be regurgitated by somebody like the governor of Minnesota. Here's a text from Dave in Ohio. What does it say about people who still support other people who lie about their military service? I've always wondered that about Dick Blumenthal. He's a guy, a stone-cold liar. Do you think about all the men who died in Vietnam, all the Americans who gave their lives, and he was going around pretending he was in combat in Vietnam, and he's been a senator in Connecticut for a gazillion years. How could you vote for such a creature? And what does it say about the person who lies about something like military service? My strong belief, is they are people who are mentally ill. There's something they've got a screw loose. They've got something wrong with them. So let's dive into all of this. Here's the headache they've got. The Democrats have a real mess. Look, they've always had a mess. When you perform a coup, and when you remove the sitting president from contention, and you got the woman who's done nothing, certainly not as border czar, certainly not as any kind of czar. She has been an abject failure. She's a nothing as the vice president. Name one thing she's ever accomplished in her tenure in the nearly 4 years she's been a heartbeat away from the presidency. It's zero. So they've already got a mess. They've already got a disaster. Now the disaster becomes catastrophic because the ticket is comprised of her and a stone-cold liar. I mean, not even including his crazy far-left radical ideology. He's a liar about his military service. So what are they going to do? As long as the crowds keep coming, I suppose they'll stick with them. Unless the polling contradicts what the crowds are suggesting. It's a real mess. It's a real mess. Randy's in Smyrna, Georgia, 800-655-MIKE, 21 past the hour. How you doing today, Randy?
I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great, thanks. What do you make of all this?
Well, the illusion that they're trying to pass, the illusion of these people, their grandiose accomplishments, like, the fake deployment to Iraq. And, I think Kamala Harris she's drawing these crowds as she did in Atlanta and Philadelphia because they were both concerts. She didn't draw those people. She had a twerking concert in Atlanta. I live here in Atlanta. She had a twerking concert.
Yeah.
Let's just say she showed up at a twerking concert and stepped up on stage. In Philadelphia, it was also a concert. They were not there to hear Kamala or Tim. They were there for the concert.
Well, you could argue that. I mean, and maybe you're right. I have a hunch you're right. But on the other hand, maybe there's genuine enthusiasm over relieved Democrats who are grateful that they don't have to support a guy like Joe Biden. She's younger. There's that. She's black. They're far left. So the young progressives may be showing up. And see, I think that's what's going to create the headache for the Democrat overlords, because they're going to say, well, we can't possibly we can't pull them off the ticket now. Look at the crowds they're drawing.
She's actually not black. She's part Jamaican and part Indian.
Right, I know.
And they're trying to pass her off as African
I
American.
know, and the federal government characterizes people of Jamaican descent as black. I mean, I get it. And I think Trump was right. She's always been heralded as an Indian American until it became more convenient for her to tout her blackness. But look, that's a losing proposition to go down that rabbit hole. Hey, she wants to be black. She's black. She's black. Her father's Jamaican. She's black. We got plenty of horrific things about her that expose the reasons why she could never be within a million miles of the Oval Office. I am absolutely obsessed with how, first of all, anyone would give a guy like Richard Blumenthal or Tim Walz a pass for lying about being in the military and serving in combat. And second of all, getting into the psyche of that individual. Daryl's in Redwood City, California. Hi, Daryl.
Yeah, hi, Mike. Hey, I just want to let you know, I think Guy Cavallaro wrote this, especially for Kamala and Mr. Walz. They're just another bad Saturday Night Live comedy skit.
This is like, if you presented this as a Hollywood movie script idea, they'd reject it because it wouldn't be believable. I mean,
no, it wouldn't
these are like a bunch of, they're like a bunch of, they like to make fun of Trump and they want to claim that Republicans are weird. They're all like a bunch of cartoon characters.
They're just a bunch of demons.
Well, that's another way to put it. Thank you, Daryl. 800-655-MIKE. Tracy's in St. Paul, Minnesota. Hey, next week, Ilhan Omar facing a primary challenge. Any chance she's going to get beat, Tracy?
You know, sadly, I don't think so. I will tell you firsthand, her district is known as Little Somalia.
Right.
It is one of the most dangerous, awful communities in Minneapolis, and she needs to go. And I think anybody in that area needs to help whoever her opponent is. Second, I wanted to tell you that Governor Walz, I'm a probation officer here in the metro area of Minneapolis-St. Paul. Crime is off the chain. As probation officers, because of his commissioner of corrections,
right,
we can't get anybody sent back to prison. There's no accountability, and he is completely in the tank with Ilhan Omar. Minnesota can do better, and I pray they don't go up higher in our country because they're both a disaster.
I hope you're right, Tracy. And I will point out that, yes, Minnesota is one of those rare, weird states where they have an open primary. So as a Republican, you can go vote for her Democratic opponent. And you don't need very many. She only won by a few thousand last time. This is not, I mean, it may be known as Little Somalia, where her district, but a whole bunch of Republicans should be able to show up and say, she's got to go. I mean, these squad members, America is recognizing that they are bat crap crazy. The media cycle that the Kamala Harris-Tim Walz campaign has enjoyed this week, they've had a good week on the campaign trail, at least at the venues. They've had a terrible few days with the revelations of Tim Walz and the stolen Valor scandal. I was listening to Tara, she's the terrific morning host in the upstate of South Carolina on News Talk 98.9 WORD, and she said something that was really important. We have a hard time sometimes delivering a simple message like this guy has lied about his military record. It's not complicated. I watched Laura Ingraham do an interview last night with the guy who actually replaced Tim Walz when he quit the National Guard. And Tim Walz has gone on and bragged about his rank and his carrying a weapon of war in war. He said the words, in war. Never been in war. CNN's calling the guy out. So they got a real mess on their hands. And Tara's right. We sometimes get kind of in the weeds and have a hard time delivering a very straightforward message. The guy is no good. He's a bad guy. He's a liar. He's a radical leftist who has done his damnedest to hurt the state of Minnesota. And I know Minnesota quite well. I know what people are going through in Minneapolis and St. Paul and in the suburbs and all throughout the state. It's a mess. He's a disaster. And he would be a catastrophe as one who would be one heartbeat away from the presidency. Trump sent out a post on Truth Social. Again, this guy has no trouble messaging. You can criticize Trump all day long. He may have deficiencies in your mind. Messaging isn't one of them. Here's what he wrote. Kamala refuses to do interviews because her team realizes she is unable to answer questions, much like Biden was not able to answer questions, but for different reasons. He is just plain shot, and she is just plain incompetent. Her policies of open borders, no fracking or drilling for oil in any way, shape, or form, transgender anything, anti-Israel, but gross incompetence toward getting anything done for the Palestinians, no clue on inflation or the economy, unlimited money to fight foreign wars, and so much more, are catastrophic. If she is elected, our country, and indeed the world, will suffer a 1929-style Great Depression. It will be the worst in history, and America will be destroyed. That's a message. That's a clear-cut, straightforward, direct warning to the American people. And at the end of the day, we're going to win this thing. Poll just came out, CNBC economic poll. Trump's ahead by 2 nationally, and he's ahead 2-1 over Kamala Harris in terms of whether Americans think either Trump or Harris will be better for them financially. For people who are suffering economically, for people who are struggling and don't know how to pay the bills, for people who can't afford, a dozen eggs, they're going to pull the lever for Donald Trump. The stolen valor thing is astounding. I don't know how long they're going to be able to fail to address this. Here was Tim Walz in 2007. He's been repeating the lie about his military service for years.
And your military background?
I spent 24 years in the National Guard, some of that full-time. I was an artilleryman. I deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. My battalion provided base security throughout the European theater from Turkey to England in the early stages of the war in Afghanistan. And that same battalion is now in Iraq at this time.
So apparently all a lie. I'm watching, my jaw was hanging open. I was open-mouthed watching Laura Ingraham interview a retired command sergeant, Major Thomas Behrens. And he went through it very matter-of-factly. I mean, this is the guy who replaced Walz when he quit rather than face combat or face a deployment in Iraq. He got out and decided, I'm gonna go be a politician now. Here was retired Command Sergeant Major Thomas Behrens last night on Fox News.
I mean, that was all said just like him saying he was a Command Sergeant Major, just another way to embellish his career beyond what it was. Stolen valor for the people that actually were in war, and he's acting like he was in war. Well, yeah, he carried an M16 back when we were in, I don't know, maybe he never even had the thing out of the supply room in Italy. I would really doubt if he ever did. I don't think I ever had my weapon out in England. My soldiers did, but I was out there making sure that they had food and making sure that they had a good place to sleep and made sure their leave. I mean, that's what a first sergeant does in a deployment like that. I mean, you're in charge of leave and passes and duty roster and different things like that. I doubt if he even took his
here's the thing about stolen
Italy.
valor, though, as this applies to the Kamala Harris, Tim Walz ticket. The Democrats don't care about stolen valor. A friend of mine pointed something out with great irony. If they don't care about stealing elections, they sure don't care about stolen valor. If they don't care about keeping our elections safe and secure, you think they're going to care about a guy who lies about his military background? But here's the thing. American voters care. Normal Americans care. I can't explain Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. Maybe someday somebody can. Before I die, maybe somebody can explain how the dummy voters of Connecticut would continue to vote for a powerful position like U.S. Senator over a guy who was a bald-faced liar and fabricating serving his country in Vietnam. When you think about how many people paid the ultimate sacrifice in Vietnam, and then you want to be a senator, and you were exposed by the New York Times as having lied about having served in Vietnam, you'd vote for that guy? What is wrong with him, and what is wrong with you, Connecticut voters? But so be it. I don't think they're going to pull that stunt again with Tim Walz. Americans are going to reject this. It's a scandal that won't go away. They're going to try to make it go away, but it will not.